Hi, I'm Adrian.
And I'm Cheryl. I'm hoping not to have to feed my bees. They all got left with a full ideal of honey. The first ideal I put on for the year was theirs. They got to keep that, and we only took anything over and above that. If I do need to feed some of them, and one of them was a new swarm last year, so they might need something, I have put aside some full frames. So if they're a bit light on in spring, I can swap out an empty for one of those full frames.
I'm not planning on feeding this year. I've left them with an ideal and half the full brood box of honey. But if I do, all I've got left are some stickies and some half frames of honey. If I need to, I'll do sugar water, 2 sugar to 1 water. And I've got some feeder boxes that I'll use to put with those. And I'll just put an ideal on top of the box and these blue feeder boxes inside. And the bees will go up the middle and feed through the caps and, well, shouldn't drown. They're designed so they don't drown. But then they will empty it right down, and then when I check them the next day, if it's nice, it should all be gone. I certainly don't want to put more in that'll stay within 24 hours.
So what are we going to do to be ready for spring?
We've already done it, haven't we?
Pretty well, I think. We cleaned up everything when we packed up at the end of the season. Before we put the frames through the freezer, we cleaned off all the excess wax and the propolis and all the messy stuff. Suits have been cleaned and packed away clean.
Tools have been scrubbed with a detergent and then a little bit of, what was the other stuff I used?
Rubbing alcohol?
Rubbing alcohol, yeah.
Yeah. Or meths.
Yeah, I think I used the alcohol. It's the same thing, isn't it? Doesn't matter.
Close enough.
You know.
So we've got the boxes all together, we've got everything labelled so we know what's for which hives.
Yep.
I think we're pretty set.
We are. There is one thing
What's
I'm doing.
that?
I'm thinking.
Oh dear.
So I've got boxes of bees. I've got 2 established colonies and one that's not doing so well, but it'll be okay. And I know in the ag notes it says to split the hive in 2 partway through spring. And that's what I'm going to do. That helps reduce the potential for swarms. The other part of that I'm hoping to achieve is I'll replace the queen in the process. So I'll move some fresh brood across into a new box. They'll generate a new queen, their own queen, with our own genetics that's doing well here. And then I will eventually maybe find the other one. I'm not very good at that. And when the end of summer, we'll merge them back together into one colony again. And I know the ag notes say that is a preferred practice.
Well, it worked for me this season just gone.
It did.
With those ones.
It was still hard to find the queen.
Oh yeah, always.
Always.
And I've definitely got a queen to be replaced in my newest hive. Because they are nasty.
They are. Swarms. What are we doing?
I struggle with this. I don't want any more hives, but feel that it's part of a responsibility as a beekeeper to give back.
It's in the code of practice. It says that we've got an obligation to. I think that's tempered with what we're capable of sustaining.
So I think maybe a case of would be happy to help out new beekeepers who want some help to go and get a hive. I'm not sure whether I might get a couple and kind of grow them on to be available for people coming in. They can buy the woodware off me and have the bees. I don't know. I'm still thinking about it.
I'm less inclined to get swarms this year. And if you didn't realise, we do things very differently. I think unless I need to replace a colony, the week one I've got 3 small swarms that we merged last season. Yeah. And they're getting there.
Those late season swarms are tricky because they're normally small, not strong.
That's why there's 3. That was a process. Thinking about it, I'm less inclined to get swarms this year unless I have to replace some. I don't want to increase my 3 hives beyond 3. I've got 2 healthy, 1 working its way up. I'll know what I want to do probably by late August because I'll have an indication of who's doing well and who's doing not.
So it is to pick up a swarm to go with an existing one that's not so strong is a nice way to grow it, as long as you don't pick up disease with it.
Yeah, and that's the downside of swarms.
When will we first open our hives? How long's a piece of string?
Yeah, pretty much. When the weather's good.
Mm-hmm.
The sun is shining. Before bikini weather.
When's that?
Yeah, okay. So 16 degrees is one of the magic numbers. The sun needs to be warm. I reckon it needs to be warm for long enough that the box is warm and is holding heat, so that when you pull it off, it's an indicator that they will build the heat back up reasonably quickly.
They need to be a bit settled. They've got to be coming and going calmly
and sitting down and spending some time with them before you open them. Our bees are mostly at home. Mine are all at home. Yours are.
I've only got 1 away.
I will go for a wander around outside and watch my bees and get a feel for where they're doing. It's a great way to lose a couple of hours. When we open our hives, what do we expect to find?
Bees?
Yeah, good point.
Hopefully in all different stages of development. Hopefully the queen's laying.
She should be doing that now, shouldn't she?
Some.
Yeah, some.
Yeah. So hopefully we'll have eggs and grubs and workers and nursemaids and others who are ready to go out and forage.
They should all be starting all their little jobs. Hopefully honey, but not too much, because if we leave them in there, there won't be any space.
Yeah, but enough to build up.
Enough to build up. Where we are here, we get a lot of pollen come August, September. A lot of pollen.
Yeah.
So that's probably when we're going to be watching carefully about feeding. The boxes themselves, we've got some idea of what they're doing. On the back of each of our baseboards, we've got a little hook, and from about once a month we'll go out there with the luggage scales and weigh each hive and record it on the top of the lid. That gives us a guide of where we're at. So at the moment I've got 2 that are sitting around the 17 kilo mark, which is roughly where they started in May. In May they're around 17, yeah. And 1 that's about 15 and a half, and that's the one I'm a bit worried about. So those ones are the ones that I'm worried about, and we'll just monitor those and see what happens, and that's probably the one I'll feed. It's possible the weight of the boxes, I think, will go up from now on, because from now on they should be breeding. They'll be bringing in some more pollen, they'll be bringing in a little bit of nectar maybe, they'll be using the honey that they've got, which will drop the weight. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with the weights over the next couple of months, and I'm quite keen to see that.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it will depend on the weather, you know, whether things warm up, whether we have a sort of mild run into spring, or whether we get some harsher weather and they have to use the reserves just to stay warm.
Yeah, and it's mid-July while we're having this conversation. And I would expect that they'd be laying now. They'd be starting to build up. We've had the gaps of warmth in the middle of the day. And that, when we get into the box, I should mention that starts off at a very narrow window in the middle of the day now. And in the middle of summer, I'll be looking at maybe going in and doing what I need to do after work, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. And then that window narrows back down to that hour or 2 in the middle of the day by about Anzac Day, I should say, when we stop getting into them if we can.
Yeah.